Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another lovely episode in the Let's Build That App channel. Really hope you are having a fantastic day. Now, in the last couple of coding videos, we have been going over some pretty interesting animations for our iOS apps, right? And it also seems like you guys are really enjoying this type of content. So I kind of thought to myself, why don't I just make a final animation tutorial that's a little bit more, I guess, on the complicated side. So let me first show you what the animation we are going to learn right here in the simulator, which is on the left side of your screen over there. And so this is the standard Facebook application. I hope you guys are more than familiar with it by now. And so for each of these post objects, what you are supposed to do if you like it is to tap on this like button on the bottom left. But if you hold on to it, what'll happen in the Facebook app is that you'll get this little rectangular box to show up with a couple of emojis inside of it. Now, what you can also do is if you kind of pan over to the right side like that and pan back all the way over to the left, you can sort of activate the icons that are inside of this rectangular box. And so once you let go, you can see that the animation actually fades out that rectangular pill object. All right, so that is the animation we are going to look at today. And so now that you have kind of a really good idea as to what it looks like, let's kind of break down exactly how this animation works, and then we will look at the code. Okay, so first question is, how exactly do we animate this view inside of our app? Well, the first thing you actually have to do is to register a gesture to detect whenever the user kind of holds onto the screen for a couple of seconds like that. And so that component is actually called a UILongPressGestureRecognizer. So a really long name, but it kind of tells you when the gesture is a long press gesture instead of a tap gesture. All right, so the next thing we have to figure out is how exactly do we know where the user is tapping, right? So if I tap up here with a long gesture, you can see that the animation of this rectangular box actually moves depending on where I tap. So the second task for us is to figure out where the user is actually tapping. So that's also pretty easy to accomplish. So once we figure out how to do that, we will move on to drawing this rectangular box onto the screen. Now, one question that you might be having is, well, what kind of component actually holds all of these icons, right? Well, something that you guys already know is that UI Stack View is one of my favorite components for, I guess, iOS 10 or iOS 11. And basically, it allows you to draw views inside of a horizontal box like this or a vertical box. So we are going to use the horizontal direction stack view to contain 6 of these icons or these emojis inside of our view. So this component is actually really simple to work with. And once you guys see it in action, you guys will also understand the simplicity behind it. All right, so once we do that, we can also figure out how to actually animate these views inside of the rectangular box every time we pan over to the right and all the way to the left. And this technique is actually something called hit testing, and it is also very simple to do. Once you see the code, you will see how easy it is. All right, so that's pretty much the feature that we're going to work on in today's video. Hopefully you guys are excited. Why don't we get started with Xcode right now? Alrighty, everybody, welcome to the coding session for today's video. Now, how exactly are we going to start off today's lesson? Well, we have a brand new single view application over here inside of good old Xcode. And let's see, we are inside of viewController.swift, and all this file has is the viewDidLoad function. So it does absolutely nothing. Now, why don't we run this application as well to confirm that we can load a white screen inside of the simulator. And that's exactly what we get. All right, so that is a very good start. And now what I would like to do is to show you the assets catalog. And let's just kind of take a look at what files we have in here. So we have all of the icons looking like that. And we have this file that kind of represents the background of our application. So this guy is called fbCoreDataBG. Now I'm going to use that as our background so that we can actually see this animation a little bit easier. So let me add an image view inside of the view controller over here. Let's see, we are going to call this BG image view, let it be of type image view, set it equal to this closure over here, and inside of this closure we will create this image view. Let's call it UI image view. We will use the image constructor, and this guy we can just pop in the FB core data BG image like so. And finally just return this image view like that and execute your closure. Now your BG image view will be the guy inside of here. Okay, so good job in getting that little bit of code inside of your application. And now inside of view.load, we are going to add it into that white screen over there. And we will call, let's see, self.view.addSubView. And let's just use BG image view. You can say self in front of it if you wanted to do so. And down here, I'm also going to set the frame on this BG image view to be, let's see, view.frame, and run it like so. Now, personally, I don't really like to use a self in front of my properties, so you'll often see that I remove the self like that. All right, so that looks pretty good. We have our image now inside of our application. A little part of the status bar all the way in the corner there, that looks a little messed up. So why don't we fix that with preferred status bar hidden and just return true so that it can indeed be hidden. All right, so once we run that, we will have the status bar, the black version of the status bar will disappear. And this is actually part of the image view, and that's why you're still seeing it in the white. Okay, so that looks good. Sometimes the syntax highlighting goes away. I'm not really sure why, but you just go back into it and it will fix itself. And let's kind of move on to the actual animation here inside of our application. And so that's kind of what that looks like, right? And in order to sort of build out such a complex feature, you should really break this guy down into a couple of easier steps to accomplish here. And the first thing I will show you how to do is to actually bring this view into our application depending on where we tap into the app. So we are going to use a UILongPressGestureRecognizer to accomplish that. And so this guy, you can see that I have to hold into the screen to activate it. So I'm going to go inside of view.load here, and I'm going to call a function, and let's call it setUpLongPressGesture. Okay, so this function, we're just going to create it down here as a file private function and set up a long press gesture. Now the reason why I'm doing this is because we don't want to pollute view.load with all of this code, and we are going to fix that by separating it out inside of this function over here. All right, so the first thing we need to do is to say view.addGestureRecognizer. And this guy is going to be the actual long press gesture. So UILongPressGestureRecognizer, construct this with a target and action, use self like so. The action will be a pound selector, and this guy we are just going to call a handle long press like that. All right, now the question is, what exactly is handle long press? Well, this is a function that we have to mark with @Objective-C, call this function and handle long press like so. All right, so in order to make this guy really useful, you actually want to declare this function with a parameter called UILongPressGestureRecognizer. And once we have that, we can say print, and let's see, what do you want to print inside of the console? We're going to say long pressed like that. And I'm actually going to include the current date as well, just to show you exactly what it does. So now with our code, we are going to run, and here we go. Here is our app. I'm going to press in, and you see the console. Let me let go, and you see the console print statement one more time. So you see how the seconds over there on the right side is 34 and 35. What is happening is when I click, we get the actual gesture to begin the actual press, and then once I let go, the gesture actually ends. So that's why we get two print statements instead of just one. And in other words, we can actually detect what is happening with our gesture over here. So let's see. The reason why we want to do that is because we have the animation coming in on the press and it actually exits on the end. So let's kind of look at the code that actually tells us exactly when that happens inside of here. So the gesture parameter is up here. You can actually check something on it. So if gesture dot state equals dot began, that's when it starts. Otherwise, you can say if gesture is, let's see, state equals dot ended, that's when it actually ends. All right, so pretty good stuff. And now the question is, what exactly goes inside of line 35 and line 37? Well, we actually want to animate a view into our application whenever it begins, and then we want to remove this view once it ends. So why don't we start by creating some kind of container view that holds all of these icons right there. So let's move that guy out of the way. And where does this container view begin? Well, typically all your properties will go at the very top of your files. So why don't we follow that good convention and add this guy in here. I'm going to call this icons container view. Let this guy be a plain UI view object, and I'm going to say let container view. Let this guy equal to a blank UI view, container view. I'm going to set this background color equal to red just to make it really visible. And I'm going to return this container view, run this closure, and set the icons container view to this guy inside. All right, so those errors should go away. I believe I need an equal sign over there just so that I can set it equal. And there we go. All compiler errors are gone. And now we have this property that we can use as something that we can enter inside of the handle long press function. Okay, so line 41, what do we want to do in here? Well, we are going to say view.add subview to add the view into our application. So we are going to add this guy once we begin the long press gesture over there. So this guy will be the icons container view. And once it ends, we actually want to remove it. So I'm going to say icons container view. You can call a function called remove super view like that. And make sure you read the documentation to see exactly what it does. But we are going to skip it because this video is going to be really long if we read everything in the docs. Okay, so if you run your application now, you won't exactly see the view. So let me just use this, click in and click out. So click in and let go. You don't see the view, and that's kind of because the icons container view doesn't really have a frame. So why don't we set a frame on it? Container view.frame equals some kind of CG rect. Why don't we create this guy using a XY with height, and I'll use 0, 0. The width is just 200 and the height is probably 100. So these are just arbitrary values that I'm using for the example I want to show you right now. So click in like that, we get the red view up at the very top there. And once I let go, the red view actually goes away. And again, the reason is because we are adding it when it begins, and when the state of our gesture ends, we remove it from the actual application view. Okay, so hopefully that is pretty straightforward. And the next thing that you probably want to do inside of your application is to maybe perhaps fade this guy in and out, or you can actually bring the view to the actual mouse location. So what I mean is we want to actually bring this view to wherever our mouse or our finger is inside of our app. Now that's a little tricky, so let me show you how to do that inside of this gesture handler guy. So whenever I press into the screen over here, I can actually tell exactly where I am pressing. And the way I will do that is to add a little bit of more code inside of here. And let's see, I'm going to say let press location, that's a pretty good name, equal to the gesture over here. And there's a method called location in view. And if you read the documentation, it says that it returns the point coordinate, the location, in a given view of the gesture represented by the receiver. A little bit confusing, but all you need to do is to say self.view. And we are going to print out this press location guy. I don't really care about this long press print statement anymore, so I'll just comment that out. And down on line 47, you will see that if I press somewhere in the middle, I'll get 170 and 304 in the console. If I press up here, it's going to be really close to 0 and 0. And if I press down here, it'll be 354 and 779 down here. So that's kind of how we tell exactly where we are pressing inside of our application. And this makes it really easy to sort of bring this red view to wherever our mouse is. Now, how do we do that exactly, right? Well, that's pretty easy if we just modify this bit of code in line 49 here by adding something called a transformation on this view. So let me show you how to do that. So this is our transformation of the red box. And let's see, I'm going to say icons container view dot transform, and this guy is a CJ affine transform property. So let's construct this and use this translation constructor down here, which comes with a X and Y translation. And for the X over here, I'm just going to use 0 for now, and we are going to figure out how to actually construct the Y value. Well, we're actually going to bring this guy all the way down to the mouse or the finger over here. So wherever our mouse is, that's exactly the Y position over here, which comes from the press location. So down over here, you can simply say press location.y, and that'll just work out for you. And to make this easier, I'll just run this step really quickly inside of the simulator. You'll see what it does. So click on that, you see the red box just follows wherever the mouse is, like that. All right, so good stuff there. And the last step to actually getting this box to appear correctly is to also make sure you center this red box as well. So inside of this app, I have this guy centered in the middle. So this entire container view is centered directly in the middle of our application. So let me show you how that works by constructing the X parameter over here. So I'm going to say let's just call this centered X and let this guy equal to something. And this something is going to involve a little bit of math, and maybe I'll type it out first before I explain it. So I'm going to say let centered X equals view frame, and we'll use the width, and I'll minus the icons container view frame.width, and then finally I'll divide this by 2, and that'll get you the right value to center this guy into the screen. So let's just replace the translation X with the centered X, and we'll run this and you'll see the red box being centered. And let's see, click into that, it is centered perfectly in the screen there, and yeah, that looks pretty nice. One final thing you want to do is you want to bring this red box on top of the mouse, so somewhere up here. So if I click on here, I would expect it to appear above the mouse. And so that is something that you can do inside of the press location transform. And I'm just going to simply add the icons container view dot frame dot height, like so. And once you run this, you'll see that the red box will appear on top, I believe. So over there, that is not correct. I believe we need a minus value instead. So that is one tiny mistake that I always make with the transformations. The direction is always a little bit confusing. So there you go. We have our red box appearing exactly where I want it. All right, so good job in getting that done, and hopefully you guys are following along so far. The next thing I want to do is to actually animate this guy into view here. So it's going to start off with some kind of alpha value of 0, and the transformation is also going to change a little bit. So you see how it animates upwards in the Y direction. So why don't I show you how the animation works, and we will also do it inside of the gesture state began. So we are going to use the alpha over here somehow. And let me just set the icons container view alpha equal to 0 in the beginning, because I don't want to have this guy fully opaque just yet. And during the animation, which occurs inside of this block here, I'm going to use the one with the spring. So you see UI view animate with duration, and we have the spring with damping and spring velocity. We are going to use this one because it allows you to kind of accelerate and decelerate your animation, and it just looks a lot nicer. All right, so with that being said, let's kind of pump in these values with the animation duration 0.5. This guy, we will use a 1 and use a 1 for that as well. The options, we'll use curve ease out like so. And the animations, just hit enter, you'll get this block. And I don't think I need the completion block, so I'll just remove it completely from the code there. And what we want to do in here is I'm going to say self.iconsContainerView.alpha equals to 1. All right, so all this code here is to basically fade in the icons container view. And we're going to see what that looks like over here. So that looks pretty good. Once you click into that, the view comes into our application and it doesn't look so abrupt and looks much, much cleaner. So that's kind of how we build out that view over there. And now the final step is to actually apply the vertical transformation in a animation as well. So what I mean is we want to kind of slide that guy up from the bottom a little bit instead of just fading it in up there. Okay, so that is actually done very similarly to the alpha over here. And what we can do is I am going to actually make the transformation a little bit different. And so here is the actual Y translation value over here. And let me just hit enter to get some space. And so this is actually the end value for the entire transformation. So this is the final position of my red box. And so why don't I cut this and put that in there and try to run this right now. And you will require a self in front of this guy. I think you need a self in front of that as well. So running that, you will hopefully see some animation of the transformation. So let's just click into that. And you see, it kind of does this weird animation in the beginning, right? And it actually does a animation like that as well. So it kind of follows your mouse a little bit, which is a little bit strange. All right, so let me show you how to fix that by actually applying a transformation at the very beginning. So the way this works is I'm going to say self.iconsContainerView.transform equal to something as well. So the easiest way of actually showing how this works is to take this guy and I'm going to paste that in there. And instead of using this, I'm just going to remove that and run my code again, and you'll see what this is going to do. So let's just hit this and bring that in, bring that in, and bring that in. So basically what is happening is, let me remove that space and try to explain here. Whenever the gesture begins, which is this bit of code, we are going to set the transformation of this red box to the center and also wherever I press the mouse, which is somewhere over here. So it should be over here where it starts. And then at the end of the animation, it should end up right here. And that Y value is subtracted of the kind of the icon container view's height. And that's why it kind of starts somewhere down here and animates to that location. All right, so hopefully all of this code here wasn't too hard to follow. The one last thing I want to do before I end today's lesson is to actually apply some code refactor to clean up all of this code over there. Now, the way I'm going to do this is to introduce a function, and I'm going to capture all this logic in that said function. Now, what exactly is that function going to be called? Well, the gesture handling over here is for the began state, so let's create it down here. Okay, so we are going to use a file private function of handle gesture began, and this guy is going to take in one parameter of UILongPressGestureRecognizer. And let me cut all of this code over here. So let me just take all that, cut that, and put that in this function. And inside of this if statement, why don't we call handle gesture began, and we will pass in the gesture that we get from the handle long press function. So why don't I remove that comment as well. So with that small bit of code refactoring, we can now run our application and we'll get the exact same behavior inside of our app over here. So if I click on that, the red box shows up again and again, and one final time like so. Now, the reason why you want to make sure your code is clean is because every time you start your function writing over here, it always starts off very, very small and lightweight, right? But as you implement more and more logic, it kind of grows out of control. And the only way to really fix that is to make sure that you have other functions to capture the behavior that you want. Alrighty everyone, that's going to wrap it up for the very first episode in this animation series. Now in the very next lesson, we are going to try to transform our red box into the actual icons container, which holds the 6 emojis inside of our application. Now, if you want to download the source code for the video that you saw today, you can head on over to the website using the link in the description below. Now, if you like what I do here and you want to keep on supporting me and what I do on this channel, make sure to check out the couple of courses down in the links below. And finally, I really hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye, guys.